Awesome to be here. I appreciate the introduction, and I have 10 minutes to share some thoughts on the keys to inspirational leadership. All right, and I have a question. And the question is, I want you to think about the most inspirational leader that you've had in your life. I think we've all probably had a leader. If not, think about what you would imagine the most inspirational leader would be. And I'd ask you to think about three words that would summarize, if you were pushed to put it into three words, that person. And if even possible, just take a moment, just jot it down. And I'm going to ask you to do this because I want you to focus, and that's our topic today. And I want you to think about everything that I say and that the other speakers say, and look at that and say, how did that connect? Because I bet you'll see a lot of threads. And when we have some good information with good examples together, can inspire all of us, because to ultimately lean into that and be that for others, right? And I think the goal here is to do that. So hopefully you had a chance just to get a couple of words about what that leader meant to you, who that leader was, and that will help frame this for today. Quickly, a bit about me. Like Matt said, driven by this passion, and it's led everything I do, both educationally and professionally. And it's given me the ability to go work with some of the most amazing organizations to help them both bring data to the table. So I think that's an important piece, and we'll talk a little bit about that. In building great workplaces. But that starts with leadership, right? We are working with leaders of organizations, helping them assess, understand culture, and take action. So when I was asked today to do this, I just simply thought to myself, what are the three core things? If I was on a stage right now to say, what are these three key things around that? So let's just pull that up as far as a title. So the three keys to inspirational leadership is what I thought about. So I came up with three, and we'll walk you through them. So the first came to me is this idea of clear vision, mission, and values. Now, even when I write that, I think to myself, okay, mission, vision, values, we've heard that before, but I've had to lean back into this. I've worked with leadership teams, and I think a real deep sense of the power of this, and why it's so important and continues to be. First is the idea of vision. And when I think of vision, I think of why do you exist? What are you here to do? Now, I'm imagining I'm talking to people that maybe run small companies or are part of a team. Oftentimes in large organizations, the vision is going to be set by the organization. Why are we here? Why do we exist? But as a leader, and your team is ultimately leading, the organization is leading people towards a common vision, right? If we don't succeed as an organization, it disappears. So it's amazing how many organizations really have a hard time describing this. And I think without it, you're kind of moving around. So that vision may be given to you, or maybe something you want to come up with your own team. Why are we even here? Which then leads to mission, which I think of as how are we uniquely going to act on that? What are we doing to bring that to life in the world, right? So maybe my mission is to help the world work better. And I do that by supporting organizations to bring in data, have healthy conversations, and engage more leaders and managers in the process. That might be my mission, right? So at this point, no matter who you are, you may have been given the vision, you may have the vision, but your mission should be defined within your team. Every team can have its own mission. So if the organization is to create, a healthier world via produce, and you're running a marketing team in that organization, sitting down with the team saying, what's our mission? We want to bring the best content to life to inspire people to consume better. Whatever it might be, it's tying that back. And then finally, the values, which is so important. And again, often overused or scoffed at because it's not lived by, but the power of solid values, defining values for your team where everybody can connect their individual values to this set of values that will dictate the behavior. How are we going to behave in our effort to move towards the thing? And I'm starting with this because leadership is also a relationship between people following and leading, right? If we can't go to our people and say, here's where we're going, here's how we're going to go about it, here's how the basics of how we're going to behave, then everything else starts to fall apart. But as humans, it helps us align and get organized. So I would ask you, if you're being honest with yourself, could you go further with this? Could you define it better? When it comes to values, I would encourage you to stay away from integrity, authenticity. These are basic core values. Personally, I would expect anybody that I work with to have some of those. What we're looking for, the values where you can take somebody who individually lives by authenticity, I want to be honest, or I want to live in my truth, and say, well, to get to where we're going to take care of each other in the process. Can you hook your personal values to that so we can go there? This team's going to take care of each other to get the job done, right? That might be one of your values. So think about that. What are 3 or 4 things that are going to dictate the behaviors to achieve success on your mission? Okay, so that's number 1, getting aligned with that. Number 2, ability to listen. Now this is right in my wheelhouse because that's what I do. I've supported organizations for many years on how do we do better with bringing data to the table. How do we listen effectively? And then take that information and be able to understand it and take action. So it was interesting when I thought about this, this idea of listening. Now, a couple of things I wanna talk about when it comes to listening. One is the art of taking yourself out of the equation. As a great leader, to be able to listen and remove yourself from the content coming in. It's not about you, right? So as you're leading, can you go out and connect with people, hear them? And this might be an exercise you want to do. I mean, after some of your meetings, without being hard on yourself, because it's a tricky thing and we all do it sometimes, afterwards say, how much of me was in that? How much of me resonated in that conversation? And work towards being able to almost put yourself aside and be there with the person or the group of people that you're listening to. And as I was even writing this down myself, I thought, I'll give you an example with me. Like, I love to be in the know. I love knowing what's going on. I'm social. That's a real part of me. However, in any sort of leadership position, I acknowledge that part of myself and keep an eye on it, because when I'm working with a team or if I'm working to lead people, it's not about me being in the know and getting the information that makes me feel better or safer because I know what's going on. But also, that's not a bad part of me. It's just a part that I know can get in the way of leadership. So is there a part of you that socially could get in the way of leadership and say, can I have that? Look, in my other working relationships and other sorts of areas, sure, let it be. But when I'm leading, I know that can get in the way, because then it becomes about me gathering data. And if I'm meeting with my people to gather data for my own needs, that's a challenge. So keep an eye on that. Also think about small group versus large group. And I say that because of my work, that yes, the art of listening in those one-on-ones and taking yourself out of the equation, all of that is very important, and you can work on that. But I think a lot of organizations, what I've learned is really leaning into the ability to listen at scale, right? So this is going to be through your surveys. It's going to be through maybe, you're on a very particular focused, you need to collect a lot of data from a group of people. So these same things hold, but also learning when you're listening at scale. If you have 100 people or 200 people on your team, you're going to need a tool. You're going to need something to support that, because you can't effectively listen quickly enough with the consistency to get a true snapshot. You'll meet with 10 or 15 people. You'll think you'll know. There's a good chance you don't, because there's another 85 you didn't speak to. So we have to think about listening at scale. So again, I'm going to ask all of you to think about what sort of organization, what's your groups, work on listening at small scale, but also look at the art of listening at large scale. So if we're running large organizations, that's really important. Another tip here is be intentional in your efforts. Just keeping an eye on time. Be intentional in your efforts, right? That when we talk about listening at scale, it's not having conversations. What are you listening for? What are you trying to understand? Are you asking the same question consistently to make sure you're getting the same data, that you can understand that, right? So be very intentional and thoughtful. If you're just floating, deciding I'm listening and I'm just moving through conversations, if you don't have a lot of intention around this listening, then you're just connecting. So be very intentional. Understand why you're listening, what you're listening for, right? You are leading this team. You need to understand the feelings, the sentiment, what's going on, so you can help better craft and move the team forward, which leads to my next piece, which is share back what you're hearing, right? As you're listening, especially as a leader, to go back to the team and say, I've spoken to many of you. I've spoken to all of you. We've run this survey. Here's what we've heard. Right? Here's what we're seeing. Here's what's going well. Here's what's not going well. There's a lot of safety in that. People want to know that you understand what's going on. You're listening. And even if it's not exactly their perspective, it is a perspective, and you understand where you're coming from. Be clear on what you're going to do about it. Right? And this is another area I work with leadership on. I often say it's as easy as 1, 2, 3, change. Change is as easy as 1, 2, 3. Pick one thing, come up with 2 things you're going to do about it, and communicate it 3 times: the beginning, the middle, and the end. All right. I'll say that again. Easy as 1, 2, 3. Pick a thing. Come up with 2 things you want to do about it, and communicate 3 times: the beginning, the middle, and the end. So if you're working with a team and you're really trying to move that team in a certain direction and make changes, use that framework. Even if things are going on behind the scenes, people go, okay, I get it. I understand. Here's what I can expect. And it happens. I promise you do that and repeat your ability and the way people are following and trusting in you, or they're going to feel much safer. And just remember, it's about collection. It's about understanding that data and then taking action. communicate throughout the entire process, and repeat. As a leader, if you're listening in that way, you're going to be doing great things by your people. Not only are you getting good information, but you're also doing it in a way that's going to build trust and connection with your team. And finally, the last one that came for me is to be in service. As a great leader, it's about serving those, right? I think oftentimes in hierarchical organizations, we forget this dynamic and who's leading who, that leadership is a relationship between those being led and those that are leading, and remembering that service piece. So it's easy to get this backwards. Again, I'm going to go back to hierarchical organizations where we have direction coming from above. You too are probably following somebody. Be a follower there. Don't forget that the people that you're leading are looking to you to lead and lead, right? The ability to listen is critical in this. So it goes back, and it's a real connection to this of being in service. But just keep that in mind and don't lose track of who you're leading and who you're following. I'm going to say, we just did an event recently when I was with Culture Amp with Esther Perel. And one of the things that really hit for me was this idea of don't BS them. And what I mean by that is, if things aren't good, don't tell them things are good just to make them feel better. Don't coddle. Be honest. Things are tight right now. This is a tough time. Here's our plan. Here's what we're going to do. Here's how I'm going to communicate with you. And we're going to get through this together. The connection and resonance between leadership and followers when people are going through tough times and feel like the leaders are being honest with them is powerful. It's also very easy to lean in the other direction. So keep an eye on that. Shoot straight with your people. Be honest. Don't tell them it's going to be okay when it's obviously not going to be okay. And then all of a sudden, you're not safe as a leader anymore. Performance and development. Separate performance from development as a leader. If you need to have performance conversations, those are looking back against the contract you have as an employee. We set out to do something. We're going to pay you X. You're going to do X. How's that going? Should we give you a raise? Should we advance you? Should you be promoted? That's a great conversation. It needs to be had. We're under contract. That's an important piece for employees to understand. However, development, the number one reason people join companies and the number one reason people leave companies is around being developed. Separate that conversation with your people. Where are you going? What do you want to do next? How can I support you in these efforts to get there? Regardless of where this thing goes, where this performance conversation goes, how do we support you? Tease those apart as a leader. Very important. Prioritize your people's well-being. I see that I'm at the end of time. Prioritize your people's well-being. Right? This goes back to remember who you're leading. Check in with them. Make sure they're doing all right. Your job is to support them, take care of them. And in the end, I asked you about the leader, that you admire, that you thought about. Be the leader that you admire. Be the one you wish you had. Be a role model. Do your best to show up the way that you wanted someone to show up for you, or somebody did show up for you. Think about that often. Look, 10 minutes flies by. I hope these 3 keys were helpful, and I really appreciate the opportunity to be here with all of you, and I look forward to the questions at the end. So thank you very much.